Hello, everyone. Time is now 4 o'clock, and I'd like to call to order the October 7th, 2021 Village of Pinehurst Planning and Zoning Board meeting. I am Jeremy Hooper. I am filling in tonight for the chair position. I'd like to point out that we have 8 board members present tonight, which represents a quorum, and we're able to do business. We'll go ahead and have each of those board members introduce themselves, starting on my right.
Good afternoon, Paul Roberts.
I'm not going to figure this thing out. Philip Shoemaker.
Sonia Rothstein, thank you for coming.
Jack Farrell.
Julia Latham.
Matt Jones. David Alzamora.
I'd also like to introduce tonight Alex Cameron and Darren Burrich, who is serving as staff liaisons to the board in our meeting tonight, so welcome to them. Just a reminder to everyone who plans on speaking tonight, board members and public alike, that the meeting is being video recorded, so please speak directly into the microphone and very clearly if you would for us. We're going to establish a 3-minute time limit for each speaker, and we ask that we minimize redundancies. If you are here tonight with a group, if you would establish possibly a speaker for yourselves that maybe wants to make the main points, we would appreciate it as a board so we're able to focus on the meeting as a whole. Personally, I have a limited time frame tonight for myself, so approximately 6:30 if we are not concluded with this meeting. We have a plan to where we will recess briefly, and if needed, if we need to continue with the meeting instead of recessing it further, Jules Latham will step over and complete the chair position tonight. So we'll do so with minimal disruption. We're going to follow the agenda tonight as prepared by staff. If anyone needs a copy of it, it's at the back of the room as well as a sign-up sheet for anyone who wishes to speak during the meeting. In the first agenda item on that agenda is the approval of minutes. Are there any additions, modifications, or corrections that anyone would like to make? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the Planning and Zoning Board minutes from the meeting of 9/2/21?
I make a motion to approve the 9/22 regular meeting minutes.
Second.
So motion made by Jack, second by Philip. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes from the Planning and Zoning Board meeting of 9/2/21 are adopted as written. So now we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is a public hearing for the Hollycrest major subdivision. Can I get a motion to recess this public hearing and recess the regular meeting and enter into a public hearing?
I move that we recess the regular meeting and move into the public hearing portion.
Second.
Motion made by Julia, second by Sonia. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, we're now in public hearing number 1. We'll go ahead and welcome the applicant forward. Go ahead and come and have a seat. Yes, please. And as we enter this meeting, as we're now into public hearing number 1 regarding the Hollycrest major subdivision, as a board, we're going to enter to the deliberation phase, where we shall provide a recommendation to the village council on the appropriate action regarding the plat. Subdivision plat reviews are administrative in nature and relative to compliance or consistency with the design standards as identified in section 9.17.1.12 of the Pinehurst Development Ordinance, and must be approved if all standards are met. So, i.e., this is not a legislative meeting that we're holding tonight, nor is it quasi-judicial. The Planning and Zoning Board may recommend approval of the subdivision plat as presented, may recommend an applicant to revise the plat for consistency with the PDO with such standards, or may recommend rejection but must provide recommendations on the ways to revise the subdivision so that it must be approved. So now I'll go ahead and turn the meeting on over to Alex for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Jeremy. So we are in public hearing number 1, and this public hearing is to consider a major subdivision request for a 40-lot, single-family subdivision. The area is located off Linden Road, which is a state-maintained DOT highway, and intersection also with Hollycrest Lane, which is an existing improved private street located within the village's extraterritorial jurisdiction, or ETJ, if you hear us refer to that terminology later. The applicant of record is Ken Bass of Bass Design and Development, and the current property owner is HEK Management LLC, which has authorized the applicant to pursue this request. The current zoning and land use of the subject property is vacant, R15 for medium-density single-family residential development. The proposed zoning and land use is no change in the base zoning of R15 and consistent with the land use of the R15 single-family residential district, and this would allow for a 40-lot single-family subdivision with the related infrastructure. The public hearing was duly posted, adjacent owners were notified, and the hearing was published. The image that you see next to the text here on the screen is a copy of the public hearing notification map that went out to the adjacent property owners. The area that is hatched here is the subject parcel. The areas in red are the lots and areas that were notified of the public hearing. I think it's important to kind of understand what subdivision regulations are, not just in the state of North Carolina, but also as it's unique to the Pioneers Development Ordinance. The authority to regulate subdivisions in the state of North Carolina is granted to local municipalities and counties via Chapter 160D, Article 8 of the General Statutes. Subdivisions are allowed to be classified into different categories. One of those categories are exempt subdivisions, and that's defined by state statute, and locally defined by major and minor. Major subdivisions like this request are classified as any subdivisions where you're creating more than 3 lots and which would involve the dedication or an improvement of any new street or streets. I think it's also important, as Mr. Hooper did just announce, what type of decision it is for proposed major subdivisions or the preliminary plats for such within our jurisdiction. Per state statute, there are 3 types of development decisions: administrative, legislative, and quasi-judicial. They are all very different in nature. Subdivision approvals per our ordinance are administrative decisions. So they're ministerial in nature, and it's based on reviewing a proposal based on objective standards in the ordinance. If the standards are met, the proposal must be approved. The board can recommend that the plat be revised to be based on consistency with the standards in the ordinance. If a recommendation is made to reject the plat, as Mr. Hooper just stated, the board or the governing board would have to explicitly state ways the plat could be revised so that it may be approved. This request, again, is to allow for a 40 single-family lot subdivision located in the village's ETJ. So that is not inside the village's corporate limits, but is under the village's planning jurisdiction. The parent tract is identified as Moore County Parcel ID number 000-20147. Again, it's located off Linden Road, a DOT-owned right-of-way, and Hollycrest Lane, a private street. Site is currently vacant and highly vegetated. The proposed lots range in size from minimum of 25,000 square feet up to the largest of plus or minus 38,000 square feet. The image on the left is a snip image of the preliminary plat that's been designed thus far. To the right is a vicinity map with overlay that has the zoning and adjacent areas. The new lots are proposed to be there outlined in yellow, with the red hatched area around the perimeter to remain as open space. The density and dimensions of the project: the R15 zoning district requires a minimum lot size of 15,000 square feet. The property is located within a public water supply watershed and therefore a watershed protection district, which does limit the overall density of development to 1 unit per acre. This proposal does meet the dimensional requirements of both the R15 zoning district and the watershed density limitations. Again, the smallest lot size is shown to be about 25,000 square feet, and the smallest buildable area on the smallest lot would be about 11,000 square feet. Other lots that are shown on the plat are for stormwater management and or other undeveloped common areas and open space around the perimeter. The dimensional requirements of the R15 here are the setbacks that would apply in the R15 zoning district for the principal building as well as for accessory buildings. All of these standards would have to be met at time of building permit for the single-family lots. So they would meet the same ordinance requirements within the R15 district. The site features, so there's 2 access points that are shown with this proposed subdivision. One, again, is with the existing Hollycrest Lane, as well as a new connection that is required and is provided off Linden Road just to the south and west of the Hollycrest Lane. Again, a 40-foot wide strip of open space is provided around the perimeter. The Pinehurst Greenway Trail currently runs parallel to Linden Road along the frontage of the proposed open space and will remain in its state. Sidewalks are required and as well are shown on the preliminary plat along one side of all proposed streets. Street trees will be required at the rate of 1 per 40 linear feet of all new roadways. However, no planted buffer is required due to the proposal and adjacent land uses all being residential. The applicant does propose internal streets of a 50-foot width right-of-way, 24-foot street width, and a 45-foot cul-de-sac radius. The applicant is proposing to utilize valley gutter in lieu of the full concrete curb and gutter. This can be allowed, but may require a waiver be granted by Village Council. Public water and sewer are proposed to be provided to the lots and will be served by Moore County Public Utilities. Current plan does indicate 2 stormwater control measures on site, and the system will be required to be designed, constructed, and inspected in accordance with the village's Engineering Standards and Specifications Manual, or the ESSM. The applicant has indicated no desire at this point to petition for annexation into the village's corporate limits, and the applicant has indicated a HOA will be formed and will be responsible for the maintenance of those required improvements just mentioned. The adjacent land uses and zoning, there's a table that shows the areas to the north to be zoned neighborhood commercial, R210 and R10, which include a religious institution, commercial area, and of course single-family residential. The south, high-density single-family residential in the R10 district, which is a density of about 4 units per acre. The same in the areas to the east. And to the west, you have some single-family attached multifamily development, the Cotswold development, which is split-zoned areas for zoned residential multifamily as well as R10, and that has a development density of about 6 units per acre. The comprehensive plan land use designation for this area is classified as suburban neighborhood, and of course, no proposed zone change, so that designation would not change. Area zoning map to the left shows those areas just mentioned in the table. The church here, R210 district, neighborhood commercial at the corner of Chicken Plant and Linden, Elliott's on Linden area, Cotswold to the west, and then to the south and the east, the high-density residential development, the R10. To the right is the image from the 2019 Comprehensive Plan Conservation and Growth Map showing the proposed area as suburban neighborhood. There will be other agency and review requirements for this proposal. A soil and erosion control permit will eventually be required to be issued by the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, or the North Carolina DEQ, prior to development. A driveway permit will be required to be issued by North Carolina Department of Transportation for the new connection there on Linden Road. After approval of the preliminary plat, the applicant may submit construction drawings for review and approval of the Technical Review Committee, or the TRC. Also, I want to explain a little bit about the major subdivision review process as it's outlined in our development ordinance. And so you will have an idea of where this proposal is within that process. At first, of course, an application, usually after consultation with village staff, is submitted to the village planner. Then it is submitted to be reviewed by the Technical Review Committee, which is made up of staff from various disciplines, including Moore County Public Utilities, the Fire Marshal, Village Engineering, Planning, etc. The TRC will review the proposal and they will issue comments based on their ordinance and code requirements, and the applicant will make those revisions and corrections and resubmit. Once the TRC has determined that the preliminary plat is in line with the respective codes and in compliance, then we can schedule a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Board. During the public hearing, the Planning and Zoning Board will have the staff and TRC recommendation forwarded to them. They will have and take public comment and make a recommendation to village council. So of course, that is the box that's shaded in the lighter blue, and that's where we are tonight with the stage. After a recommendation is formed by the Planning and Zoning Board, the village council will hold a public hearing and review the proposed subdivision. Based on the action of the village council, if it's approved, construction drawings may be submitted back to staff TRC for review. If that preliminary plat is denied, again, it would have to be stated clearly how it can be revised so it be approved and must be based on ordinance standards. And if it is denied, then the applicant could appeal to the Moore County Superior Court. Once construction drawings are approved by the Staff Technical Review Committee, the infrastructure can then be installed and then later inspected to ensure compliance with the village standards. Only after that can a final plat be submitted for review by the village planner and either approved, which would create the lots and be recorded with the County Register of Deeds, allowing for, at that point, the submission for an issuance of building permits for the single-family lots, or if not approved, that decision can be appealed to the Board of Adjustment. Again, as Mr. Hooper stated at the beginning of the meeting, the action of this board is to conduct this public hearing, which is a local ordinance requirement of the development ordinance. Even though this is an administrative decision, it is elevated to a public hearing asking for public comment, even though the decision by this board must be based solely on the ordinance standards. After holding the hearing, the board can take one of the following actions. They can ask the applicant to revise the plat based on ordinance requirements and staff recommendation. They can recommend action on the proposed plat to village council, either in the form of approval or denial. And if for whatever reason something was brought up during the public hearing that required more information to determine compliance with the standards, the board could continue the public hearing to a time and date certain. The staff technical review, as previously mentioned, has reviewed this plat since its first official application in April of this year. And we have issued comments on the proposal to the applicant. They have resubmitted, and we have determined compliant based on those revisions. And we actually, after formulating many rounds of comments, we have deemed it to be compliant and recommend that the Planning and Zoning Board recommend approval of the preliminary plat to Village Council. And that will conclude my presentation at the moment.
Thank you, Alex. So again, welcome to the applicant. Thank you for joining us here tonight. Would you guys please introduce yourselves and begin any presentation that you may have? Thanks.
Pass.
Jeff Barzak from Barzak Engineering Services.
Thank you. Go ahead and proceed.
I mean, I'm not sure that we have a presentation. What Alex has just presented is our presentation. This is, 6 months worth of.
Thank you, Ken. I was
This work?
watching that.
Sorry.
No worries.
I'm sorry. So I don't know that we have a presentation per se. What Alex just went through is our presentation. So we've been working on this for roughly 6 months. It's a piece of property that I've known about, and, I've just known about it for a long time. And it's a very nice piece of property. It became available, so we had the opportunity to engage in a contract. And we think we've designed the highest and best use for that property based on what the village will allow. I think actually we've gone a little bit above and beyond the ordinance. So hopefully the planning and zoning will also see that.
Typically, I don't want to ask any questions at this stage, but do you want to provide any history possibly about anything you may know about the piece of property?
I'm not sure that I know correct information. I think it was originally developed back in the 80s maybe, or started as a development back in the 80s, and I think the home in the center was actually originally going to be the clubhouse, I think that's what I heard. There is one street with, I think, 9 lots already platted, and that's kind of where it ended, whether it was financial or health or whatever, I'm not quite sure, but that's kind of the state that it's been in for a very long time.
Yeah, okay. So just to move us forward, let's go ahead and move into the public comment portion, if that's the end of your presentation. Thank you, gentlemen, and we will, if you don't mind, after the public, well, go ahead and sit there, and we'll let the public comment at the microphone behind you, and then we'll have our questions.
Watch your back.
Yeah. That's what I was going to see if I could grab that. So again, just to remind everybody who plans on speaking tonight, so the first round of public comments, we want this to be directly related in your comments directly to this application. If you have any comments you want to be made as from a general standpoint, we'll entertain those at the end of the meeting as well. Has everybody signed this that plans on? I'm sorry? Okay. So just a reminder to please speak directly into the microphone and clearly, if you would. Yes, ma'am. Thanks, Jules. At the end of the list, I will ask if anybody else plans on speaking to this application. So if you haven't signed it, we'll make sure you get the opportunity to speak. But again, just a reminder, 3 minutes per person speaking, and if we get to a position where everything's being redundant, please consolidate. Should have started the list. And again, I will ask at the end of the or at the end of each conversation or public speaking if anybody else wants to join. Thank you. Sure. So if I get these names wrong, please forgive me. So number one, is it Sue or Peter Struck? Thank you for joining us tonight. Will you approach the microphone? Feel free to speak clearly into it in 3 minutes.
Close enough. Can you hear me? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Sue and I live at 410 Sugar Pine Drive. 2 questions that we're concerned about. The wildlife, mostly deer, have free roaming going east to west frequently every day. And my question is this development going to impact on that free passage of the deer herds? Some as many as 8 or 10 come through. You can't hear me. Okay, let me go through it again. Our first concern is about the free running of the deer through our residential area. And it's moving toward the currently vacant place that's under consideration. And I went to the DNR and they said, no, go to Moore County. I went to Moore County and they said it's up to the village of Pinehurst to concern themselves with this. I grew up in Wisconsin where there are such rules in terms of development. So that's number one. Number 2 is my concern about the density, the increasing density. We've lived here 10 years. of traffic, automobile traffic on all the main roads, including Linden and 5. So if you have 40 residential residences, and if you say 2 vehicles times 40, you're probably got 80 vehicles available to add to the increasing density, and that's an issue for us. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Struck. So next in line, we have G. Michael Gardner. Would you please approach and please give your address?
Thank you. I live at 400 Sugar Pine Drive, and the handout that you sent around with the proposed area, it looks to me that there are already a number of houses in that area that are not shown. Am I correct, or am I reading it, looking at it incorrectly? I mean, right behind my house, there's a street, and there are homes on that street, and they don't show on that circle. So I don't know, are you planning on knocking those down, or I had a little trouble following the map. So that's my only question.
Well noted. Alex, would you like to respond?
Alex, I think I can help you out. I think he's talking about the existing lots that are not part of this development. They're existing already. On Keswick. That is not part of the development.
So it's not part of the development. We just want to be clear.
Is that correct, Alex? That's what I believe those are the lots he's talking about, right?
And that's what I'm not understanding. I was trying to pull up the map. You said you were at 400 Sugar Pine. Is it the area that would be directly abutting your lot, or you're talking about the existing internal area?
Alex, is that Clarendon Gardens?
What lot number? I know the house number is 400. What is your lot number? Oh,
So I think,
So if you can follow on the screen, here's the lot, and there would be lot 15 and 16 would be abutting your property.
So he showed me a map, Alex, and what he's concerned with is just that we show the lots as they're platted, but we don't show the actual house itself on the lots, which is not part of the, I mean, if you want to address that.
well, it's not required at this point in time to show the lots that are on there. And so please understand that as we do the comments, we may not be able to answer each one, but we will include those a lot in our deliberation back with the applicant. So let's go ahead and move forward. So John Taylor, would you please approach the microphone and state your name and address, please?
Hello, John Taylor. We're at 7 Spruce Lane. My concern has to do with the drawing is laid out new storm and sewer drainage, specifically on the east side, which is what would front us, of new lines going into the buffer zone, which of course would mean tearing up that whole buffer zone to put the line in to begin with. And I'm more concerned, are they going to be piggybacked on the existing lines, which have been known to overflow at times? If so, there could be a capacity problem. Or are they going to be draining somewhere else, or how they're going to tie into the system? I don't see on the drawings where it shows any tie-in to existing sewer lines.
Thank you. Is it Terry Heller? Is that correct? Welcome, Ms. Heller.
Terry Heller, also 7 Spruce Lane. We understand from people at the village that this is actually part of the historic district. Is that correct? Yeah. Oh, okay. But so does that mean everything? All the land, is that part of the historic district?
This subject property is not located within the Pinehurst Local Historic District.
It's not,
Correct, it is not.
okay, because that's what we were told by employees of the village.
I can't imagine that coming from our staff, but I apologize if that was disseminated. That's incorrect.
All right, my other question is, who is going to be developing the lots? Is it one builder? Is it Mr. Bass building it? All the homes?
We'll get into answering that at the case, but I think at this point in time, the applicant is presenting themselves as the developer. So we'll ask some of those concerns into our deliberation. What else, Ms. Heller? Thank you. Ms. Ann Bourne?
So I'm Ann Bourne. I live on Pine Court, which
Welcome.
is at the south end of the proposed development. And my issue has to do with traffic, a little more detailed than the first gentleman who spoke. Linden Road is the way in and out of this proposed subdivision. And number one, as it is right now, all of us who live there and use Linden Road primarily to get in and out of where we live, pretty much you are never at either end out onto Route 5 without 3, 4, 5, 6 cars waiting also to get out at those stop signs at either end. So that's my number one concern is when this 40, dense development comes in, that's going to be probably, at least 80 more cars added to the only way they can get in and out is one of those two. The second part of that is during construction. So there is already almost no shoulder on Linden Road. We're going to have large construction equipment coming in and out of there. Again, the only way to get in and out of there is Linden Road, no shoulder. And the way that development is happening right now, a lot gets sold, house starts going up. So, when I think about, multiple houses going up in this area, all using Linden Road in and out, those of us who use Linden Road to get in and out are never going to be able to get in or out. I know that wasn't really a question, but it was, what is being done to take that into consideration?
Thank you. Linda Venters, is that correct? Understand, would you like to speak into the microphone? Maybe that will help.
My name is Linda Venters, and I live at 3 Osage Lane.
Welcome.
I've had the wonderful opportunity of having those beautiful woods behind me for almost 23 years. I knew one day it was going to end, but that's progress, I guess. So I'd just like to ask Mr. Bass, when does he anticipate the bulldozers to come in and start tearing down all the beautiful trees and foliage that's back there? Because I'm right up against it. And also my dear friends, the deer, who everybody in Pinehurst hates. But I love them, and they've been there through thick and thin, and they're living back there, so they're going to have to find a new home. Okay? I just would like to know, how long do I have to enjoy the foliage before I have to say goodbye to it? Thank you.
Understand, and we'll get you answered. Thank you. Lynn Ammons. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Lynn Ammons. I live at 4 Pine Court, and our lot is the pond. So my concern definitely is the storm drainage. We have the exit drain coming into the 40-foot easement between our house and the pond. I'm concerned that there will be excess water. I'm also concerned about the 40-foot easement, the trees that are there, whether they'll be staying there, going all the way around this development. And there was a tree assessment done, and I wonder if that had any effect on selling of the lots, because that was a requirement. Also, there's a Progress Energy easement, which I'm wondering about. They do come back, and they keep that area cleared back there so that we keep electricity. There is a new city park that I have read about on Chicken Plant Road that will affect the traffic, along with HEK owns lots in this development that are not part of, I think, Ken Bass's development, plus there are already existing homes within Hollycrest. So we're talking about a little bit more than this new development. And I think that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Hammonds. Jamie Keene.
Hi, my name is Jamie Keene. I live at 101 Keswick. I am one of the existing homeowners in Hollycrest. So this new development is not necessarily new. It's going to impact the existing homeowners. There are 4 other homes that are in the development now, one of which is Hollycrest Manor, which is a historic landmark. And it really is alarming to me that Mr. Bass does not know the history of where he's building. Hollycrest Manor has a lot of history. It was owned by Walter Hines Page. He was the ambassador to the UK during World War I. His father actually founded the town of Kerry, and he founded the town of Aberdeen. So my question is, how can Pinehurst allow the development of tract homes around a historic landmark? This development is not going to complement the area. This is a local treasure, and it's going to detract from it. So my question is, would Pinehurst allow tract homes to be built adjacent to the Carolina Hotel or anywhere in the village? Why would they allow this to be built around a historic landmark such as Hollycrest? And also I'm learning that the name Hollycrest is to be changed to Bass Estates. Can we get any more narcissistic from a man that doesn't even know the history of the development he's building with his existing homeowners? So that is just, I'm flabbergasted that he doesn't know that. Urban sprawl does not belong in Pinehurst. If we wanted to live in Cary, we would. These lots that are next to the existing homes are extremely narrow, and they are just not deep, they're shallow. So he's going to be building McMansion-size homes on these tiny postage stamp lots. So I don't know, developing here wasn't a good idea 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago. It's not a good idea now, at least not the kind of plan that Mr. Bass is proposing. We need to go back to the drawing board, Mr. Bass, because we don't like what you've come up with for Hollycrest.
Sorry for that background. So forgive me for the next name, Tara Marizano. Did I say that incorrectly? Oh, wow. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tara Maranzano. I am actually a recent transplant to your beautiful community of Pinehurst. I've only been here 4 weeks. Sad to say that if we had been informed of this development, we would have not purchased in Hollycrest. Hello, Alex. How are you? The problem with having not been informed is because we proceeded to purchase in an area that I considered extremely gorgeous, extremely beautiful. The corridor for the deer that live in the area, to me, was astounding. I understand you had a problem with deers, but they were here first. Just like where I came from, coyotes were there first, and you just take the necessary precautions. But we bought based upon the beauty of the area and the fact that it was quiet. A little bit of traffic noise, but doable. Plus, we had insulated windows. My concerns, Jamie took some of my fire when she talked about the historical manor, and from reading the history, I was so impressed with what the McAllisters had done to the property to restore it to its former glory. And I agree with Jamie, I forgot her last name, sorry, that the history of the area is important because that's part of Pinehurst's mission statement, is it not? To preserve, protect the environment and the history behind it. And as she pointed out, there's a tremendous history to this manor. And to develop 40 homes in really a very small piece of acreage does no justice to what the McAllisters have done to that home and to the area. Plus, I do have a concern that there is a horse cemetery somewhere on the property, and nothing has been addressed in terms of the negative impact of any development upon the cemetery. I also have a concern, and it is a bit of a question that I don't think Mr. Bass needs to answer, is why did he wait so long? The Kramer family purchased that property after it was foreclosed upon by its previous builder, and they kept the property in its state. They made no improvements, no repairs to the roads. The houses that are on Keswick, and I'm sorry, don't mean to segue here. Did I indicate where I lived?
It's 30
Okay.
seconds as well.
Thank you. The development around it, I don't believe gives it value. The other question I wanted to address was the traffic issue. According to the plat, the ITE study that was done indicated that there would be they estimated a total of 448 trips per day on Linden Road.
Maranzano, thank you very much, just as an attempt to keep the...
Certainly. But if I would be enabled at the end to continue, I'd be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I have Wayne Boyles and Stephanie Boyles. If we... Okay, that's okay, sure, thanks. If you don't mind stating your address before you begin, thank you.
Yes. Wayne and Stephanie Boyles, we're at 360 Sugar Pine Drive, and our concern, three questions. One, the sanitary sewer easement within the 40-foot buffer. It's really not a 40-foot buffer if you have a sanitary sewer line running in it. What we would be happier with is if those lines were flipped and they ran along the front of the properties instead of the rear of the properties. Also, the storm basin, what is that? I know a present one exists already, but there's a new storm basin proposed, and especially in the summertime, that would attract mosquitoes, which is not a very healthy thing. And what types of housing? Are they tract homes? Are they custom-built homes? Are they spec homes? What kind of housing are we talking about there?
Hi, this is Stephanie Boyles. And our fourth question really had to do again with that 40-foot setback, which we appreciate the builder putting that in there. But our question had to do with what trees are going to be spared, or is it good? I mean, we see the trees are marked with the red bands, but I'm not sure if everything's going to go in and be just cut down, or are they going to leave some trees and cut down stuff around them, or what? How's it going to look, or is it going to be left in the state it is now?
And also with the Duke Energy buffer zone, with the lines running through that area, there's some houses that have difficulties with electromagnetic radiation. So that's, that's a concern that you should take into account also. Thank you so much for the board's, Chairman Hooper, thank you for the board's time.
And thank you so much for the invitations to the hearing. We
yeah,
appreciate being notified about it. Thank you.
As Andy Griffith would say, we appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Christy Nix. Welcome, Ms. Nix. If you'll just state your address for everybody in the room.
Christy Nix, 5 Osage Lane. I don't think I can follow up on Andy Griffith, but I'll do my best.
Welcome.
I echo all of the comments that have already been said, so I only have a couple of things, and they are along the same vein. Assuming this progresses as planned, my one concern on Linden Road is the second entrance. It's rather close to Pine Vista, which we all traverse in and out of every day in the neighborhood. That road, if you're driving down it, comes down like a little hill right there, and the speed limit has just increased as you enter that area from 35 to 45. And so I know already as I come down over that hill, there's the Foxfire Road on the left and Pine Vista on the right, I'm sorry, Pine Vista on the left, and now you're talking about adding a third street right there in that general area where the road is already coming down, and as you're cresting that hill, it's kind of a blind spot area. So I'm just a little concerned that you're adding that third intersection in what already is a Y intersection with Foxfire Road. So that's just kind of adding on to all the other comments about that. And I guess my other thing is the trees. I see the red markings on the trees like everyone's talked about already. I don't quite understand the difference between the red and white banded trees and the singularly red banded trees. I do know that there are only a handful of red banded trees in this entire area. And does that mean that everything else is going? Is anything, people have already said, staying in that 40-foot area in between? There's 2 trees banded out behind me in a very large area, and it's very disconcerting to me that those would be the only 2 trees left standing, considering the woodpecker areas around there and just the general vicinity in general. And particularly just to kind of draw on the fact that we proudly display that we're a tree city, and I don't know if that's the incorporated Pinehurst that's a tree city, or Pinehurst in general that's a tree city, but the sign has changed every year up there on Highway 5, and we brag about it, and it's one of the things we love the most. So I know the things that I read from the village, and I don't know if Shannon is here, but she was so helpful to me. I just want to thank her from the office. Is she here? Oh, thank you for calling me back. I really appreciate that. But it recommends, if possible, trees at the breast height of greater than 8 inches in diameter, and there's a ton of those trees on this plat, and I only see the ones that are maybe like this, red banded, so I am kind of concerned about the number, if that in fact is representative of the trees that would be left behind. Thank you. Thank you for having this. I actually, oh, and one other thing, is there really a brick wall going up in the 40-foot area? We were told by a surveyor that there was going to be a little brick wall running around the entire community. So
thank you very much. So the next one has stumped me. Forgive me. Is it Dalla at 70 Scott Road? Ma'am, do you mind just introducing yourself into the microphone for me, and forgive me for not being able to decipher that.
Can't say my last name.
Yes, ma'am. You busted me. I apologize.
Hi, I'm Lola Garbarino, and my husband and I purchased were the original owners at 105 Keswick Lane. We bought our property in 91, and we moved in 92. Unfortunately, I lost my husband recently, and I sold my house. However, you wanted the history on Hollycrest. Hollycrest was one of 7 communities built at the same time. Started late 1988. Most of it was done in 1989. And as there were 7 communities going up, this is one community that didn't make it. And there were a couple others that we all know today, but this was the history of it. All the time that we lived there, we took care of that area. We had people come and take care of the bushes, the trees, whatever. The lights that were lit entering Hollycrest were out, but the lights on Keswick were left on. It was a good part. It was a safe part. We had a guardhouse there that unfortunately some people got into and ruined it, and so we went in, we cleaned it out, and we had someone come and close the doorway and put tiles on the inside so you would not be able to open the door. And that was to, again, keep the area clean, keep it neat, and keep it safe. One of the reasons, and I'm just throwing this in, one of the reasons for the traffic, which I understand, we never had trucks on Linden Road. One of the problems is that Pinehurst will not get rid of the traffic circle, which was wonderful when we had 1/4 of the people that we had today. Today, the circle is a disaster. We now have people coming every which way to come up Linden Road. Have you been on 5 lately? You stop for a traffic light, it's backed up to Blake Boulevard where the post office is. And this is all traffic building because we have a disastrous circle. Anyhow, talking about it does no good. The other thing I want to ask you is Pinehurst is coming up with all these rules and regulations for Hollycrest. We're not Pinehurst. We have never been Pinehurst. We don't call the Pinehurst police if we have a problem.
Kimberly,
We have
30
to call the
seconds.
sheriff. We have to call the sheriff. We don't pay taxes in Pinehurst because we are not Pinehurst. Somebody was going to have us join Pinehurst when Cotswold joined Pinehurst, and we did not. So we're not Pinehurst. Yes, I understand that, but when it comes to certain rules and regulations, there are a few differences there too.
Ms. Gabrielline, I am so sorry to stop you, but we're out of time on yours. Thank you very much. Sharon Cuff, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Will you state your address for me, please?
Excuse me?
Will you state your address for us here in the...
I live at 1229 Linden Road, and I grew up at 1072 Linden Road, which is directly across the little white house that sits up on the hill by Cotswold. And I'm one of five generations who lived on Linden Road, my family. My grandparents built where Elliot's restaurant is and the old chicken plant, and their farm was where the church now is, and their house behind their country store there. And so I'm 68 years old. I've lived there practically, except for my young married life, a couple of years on Linden Road. And I just hate to see the beauty. It's one of the most beautiful roads in Pinehurst, the trees and, you know, I understand if you have a piece of property, you should be able to build, but I just hope that, you know, I think Mercksville Road looks horrible, and I don't ever want to see Linden Road look that way. It's too beautiful to ruin, and It looks like the houses will be oriented with the sides and the backs towards Linden Road, and I think we need to have a thick buffer all around. And if you drive down Linden Road, it's tree-lined everywhere except where the power line runs. And I just think it's really important to keep Linden Road. And I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cuff. Thank you. And I guess Mr. Cuff right here as well. Gene, will you introduce yourself as well as your address?
My name's Will Cuff, 1072 Linden Road. My grandmother lives there, and I do most of the maintenance for her. And I talked to Ken briefly about this. The watershed from Cotswold has really caused an issue for her, especially when we get a large rain. Water backs up in her front yard 200 feet, and it'll be knee-deep, even deeper at some points. There's a 14-inch culvert that goes underneath the road, underneath Linden Road, that feeds the existing pond that's there now. My concern is the watershed that Cotswold has caused, her 12 acres there. She's the long L-shaped piece that kind of encapsulates Cotswold. What is going to happen with all that water that comes from Cotswold that flows underneath Linden Road into the pond, into that storm basin that is there now? What is going to happen with all that water when you put 25 houses right there in front of this piece? And the traffic, everybody's talked about the traffic. My grandmother built there in 1955, and she could barely walk to the end of the driveway now and pick up a newspaper without getting run over. Traffic's pretty bad out there right now. I'm sure you're aware of it. But my main concern is the water and what is going to be done to ensure that she's not affected any more than Cotswold has caused problems for her. That is my main concern, is the effects it has to her property, the negative effects. Being a property owner directly across the street. She's been there since 1955. I think she should have some sort of a voice. But that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. R.G. McAllister. Welcome, Mr. McAllister.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Russell McAllister. I live in that big circle right there on the map right there. That's a house is named Garin Hill, called Hollycrest at the present time. And I want to say that although I recognize this is an administrative hearing, and that Mr. Bass is a businessman, and that's what his interest is, I am profoundly disappointed that nobody in this room seems to have taken any interest or concern at all about the historic nature and background of this property. The property was owned by the Page family, who sold land to Mr. Tufts for Pinehurst. The Page family once owned a good bit of Moore County. There are Page homes in Aberdeen that have singular historic qualities. And in fact, the Hollycrest Garin Hill house in the middle of that was recently put on by the Village Heritage Commission as one of their historic landmarks for Pinehurst. So the fact that Mr. Bass knows nothing about the historic nature of the property, or Miss Betty Dumaine, who lived there for 40 years and was a real character in Pinehurst and remembered by a great many people here, and has been subject to a good bit of attempts at improvement over the years, suggests to me that Mr. Bass, as a businessman, is going to put up houses that have no inclination toward respect for the historic nature of the property. Now, that's not your concern now. I understand Planning and Zoning Commission, but I hope that some sort of approach to and appreciation for the historic nature of this property as a part of the Pinehurst community will infuse your decisions and your recommendations to the Pinehurst Village Council. And I'm particularly concerned with the points that have been made before. Are these lots going to be put out for spec homes? Or are they going to be custom homes somewhere? We've had no information about this. And it seems to me this is relevant to your consideration for what happens to this last piece of historic property in the Pinehurst community. Thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else with us tonight who did not sign up but would wish to make a comment? You've already spoke. I really apologize for that. Yes, ma'am. Will you approach the microphone, state your name and address, please?
Hi, my name is Kelly Elliott, and I'm with Elliott's on Linden, 905 Linden Road. I think right now one of my major concerns is the road, and that's all I can say for right now. Just this past year, we had an accident of a little boy that was hit by a truck. We've also, over the past 2 years, we have also had an accident of a young man who was murdered right at that corner of where Elliott's and the church are. And again, I'm sorry, I forgot the previous citizen that was up here speaking, but those accidents occur because of the hill right there. So, you know, the traffic that has increased over the past years because, again, Pinehurst, Aberdeen, Vass, everywhere is just growing. And that's great and all, but again, I think there should be a true study on the traffic patterns going up and down that road. It's just really important. And we've witnessed 2 horrid accidents being out there all day. So I just want to let the zoning committee know about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? If there are no more requests for comments, we'll go ahead and move into board questions for the applicants. Paul, would you like to begin?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to appreciate everyone's time and the comments that were made. I think they were very relevant to the public process, and I think many are sympathetic towards your concerns. You know, we have to follow the PDO. That's our guidelines. It provides us the objectivity of making decisions, and unfortunately, sometimes there are decisions that neighbors or citizens may not like. There was a comment made, you know, talking about it does no good. I think it does. Just have to do it much earlier in the process. You know, get in front of the village council and make sure that those decisions and those type of historic things in Pinehurst are forefront, and they're not, you don't lose sight of them. With that said, I'll go into a couple quick questions for the applicant. Sir, you did mention that you've spent quite a bit of time already, you know, doing the research, so a lot of questions and concerns about the trip generations. Have you had an opportunity to do the computations and figure out how many 40 homes would be up and down Linden Road and how that would increase, I guess, time you're stopped at stop signs and things like that?
Sheriff Paul, if I can address your question, Jeff Barzak here. Early on in first submittal, we contacted Dago at the Department of Transportation, who is the authority of Linden Road. We asked him what improvements he would incur on us for this development. We showed him the 40 lots, received feedback from him. We also received feedback from the Planning and Engineering Department to get the IT studies done. We have provided those with our application to the subdivision. It has met all the requirements that were imposed upon us. We shared those with DOT, and they have gotten back to us and determined that there were no improvements for our intersection that were warranted at this point.
Okay. What was the computations? How many trips per day additional on Linden Road?
It's
was it
on the
estimated?
plat. I'll refer to that if you can pull that up, because I don't have it on top of my head. It's in the upper left, Alex. I think it was like 400.
448 total
Yeah.
is on the plat.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Yep, I see it here. Thanks. Okay, 448 per day additional.
There's
trips
an
on the road.
AM and a PM computation that was run
Okay.
with ESM standards with Mike Apke of the engineering department.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, you heard the same concerns. Again, the time that you've already spent in here analyzing the market, what are the types and style homes that are anticipated? I understand it's beyond this, the process we're at, but it may alleviate a lot of the citizens and neighbors. So will there be similar homes to the three that are already at Keswick Lane?
I'll answer that best I can. I'm not going to build the homes in the neighborhood, so I'm going to do the infrastructure, and I have a contract in place with a builder. They will not be tract homes per se. They will be fairly expensive homes. The builder has expressed on more than one occasion of trying to bring Village Pinehurst architecture into this development. So I can't say exactly what they're going to build, but it will not be something that you see on Murdochsville Road. It will be nothing of the sort.
Would you let us know who the builder is?
I'd rather not say right now at this meeting. I could share that privately.
Okay, no, thank you, I appreciate that, and that's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Paul. Philip?
All right. Really administratively for Alex and Darren, how long has this tract been zoned R15? So long, based on your expression, it's been a while.
All my knowledge is that it has been zoned, the current zoning R15 for quite some time. I mean, the village has had zoning regulation for only 30 to 40 years. So I would think for the large chunk, if not all of that time, it has been zoned R15, medium density, single-family residential.
And have there been any changes here in the village through the PDO that prevented this from being subdivided earlier, or is that something that could have been done throughout that entire zoning?
And I
Mr. McAllister, I apologize, but just for quorum reasons, we would like to kind of continue with our portion of this meeting at first. No, forgive us, we just don't want to promote thank you, sir.
So I can speak from statutory and land development regulations and not necessarily history, so I was not trying to speak out of turn in your viewpoint there. But for zoning and land development regulations, the process for subdivisions have changed over time with the development regulations. But again, because of how land development and those amendments can be processed, nothing would have ever, other than it being developed out by whatever other master or conceptual plan, would have kept development from occurring on this property some way, shape, or form. Or at least an application being put in, and whatever decision process was required based on that application to be carried out by the governing board.
And again, just for my clarification, this is in the ETJ, correct?
Correct.
Somebody had mentioned a wall being built around the property. Could you confirm, is there?
I have no knowledge of a wall being built.
Okay, thank you. Couple concerns, I guess, about water that came up a few times as far as drainage. Somebody had asked about the second storm pond being put in, storm basin. Any general comments you all would like to make about that, or negation of water, especially at the back of the property where it may continue downhill until the property's behind? And that's my last question.
Yeah, so.
Southernmost. Yep.
The southernmost pond?
The southernmost storm basin,
I
yes.
guess I'll address both of them. Preliminary reviews for the drainage contributing to those areas has been looked at, and the size was determined to meet current Pinehurst regulations for stormwater regulations.
Thank you, Philip. Sonia? Sure. Yes.
Sorry. First of all, thank you for coming. I totally understand as a homeowner how you feel. I'm going to ask one question, then readdress it to the public. The storm water, I know we're working on trying to redo in Pinehurst. Is that not correct? Because I even live in an area where we get flooded out, never thought about it.
Yes, we are working on a stormwater master plan.
So do you think this subdivision is going to be into those new ways we're going to do it? Or are we going to end up having to pay to redo some of this? That's my question.
So our regulation would be that the post-development runoff in this area would have to be engineered to be managed on-site to treat pre-development runoff at a rate for a 10-year, 24-hour storm event. So that, I'm sure that recent development proposals will be reviewed as part of the stormwater master plan and how that can be addressed with our aging infrastructure that we have in place.
Thank you. I'll keep the comments for later.
Thank you, Sonia. Jack?
A member of the public mentioned that there was a culvert leading from Cotswold directing water to this. Is there a culvert and/or a pipe that leads to that particular storm basin, the southernmost? That would be indicated on the map normally, wouldn't it be?
Jeff, will you be able to answer?
I'm not aware of any stormwater culvert, and it might be buried at this point, maybe causing the problems. But what I do know is that all the water on the west side, well, northwest side of Linden Road will not be affected by this development because we're on the downside, the lower side of that storm basin. So we will be controlling our own stormwater. That may be a problem they're having on their side, but us developing this site being downstream will have no effect on that.
Okay.
Question kind of on that note. Alex, when we get into stormwater calculations for this subdivision plat, is there any type of identification or calculation for outside water influence, such as any sort of culvert running to the subdivision?
Yeah, I mean, when the engineer performs the analysis for what the pre-development runoff and what the post-development runoff will be, those factors on site will be considered, where it's coming from, how it's going to be managed and mitigated, and be kept and treated on site if need be.
During that calculation, there is kind of a site visit, I would probably, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of the engineered analysis, which again, I know I spoke a lot about this at the staff presentation. This is the stage of this proposal is at the preliminary plat. The bulk of the work is on a one-page document. During the construction document phase is when the greater engineering and the more analysis will be done on the site. And of course, it's going to be in line with the current adopted standards, and anything over that is just going to be up to an applicant to provide. And sometimes, I don't want to speak for engineers, I know we have at least 3 in the room. Sometimes based on site visits and field studies, they might go above and beyond because they've noticed extra measures may be needed.
No, there should be some assurance that external factors would be considered in the final calculations. Is that correct?
I think that's a fair statement.
Okay, because Cotswold did have a number of problems, as we know, and in fact, that may have led to the annexation years ago. So, right.
And there's been new measures put in place at Cotswold in the recent year or so because of some of the issues that the gentleman mentioned earlier.
So, 2 other things. One is the the open space calculation on the application form says 5.4 acres, number of acres of dedicated open space, and yet on the plat it says 6.32. Am I missing something there?
There was a recent adjustment with the latest version of the plat based on the final round of TRC comments. So the application, when it initially came in I believe it was April, and based on some of the comments from the TRC about some of the area outside of the existing platted lots there along the Hollycrest lane, it's, again, we understand the plat can be a little difficult to view. There are a lot of lines on there, but which is pulled up there on the screen. There's a little bit addition there of the area around the drive as it comes in and kind of ellipse around on either side, and then a very narrow strip behind those existing lots on Keswick Lane. That area was subsequently included into the open space with this latest revision from the initial application.
Okay, so
that's
the
where increase is.
6.32 is correct?
Correct.
I mean, because if you take the 50 or 40 feet all the way around, you come up with almost close, a little under 6 acres in itself, yeah, so, okay. My other question, it doesn't relate necessarily to the approval or any suggestion, but is there an HOA currently in place? It says in the application that one will be formed. I think the deeds on the current property specify that there is an HOA requirement or their declarations. Is there an HOA in place at this time? Or will there be an HOA? I guess that's the better question.
I can answer, will there be one? Yes. It's my understanding that there was never formally an HOA formed there.
And so would there be then 2 HOAs, one for the previously developed property and another one for the new property?
No, it's kind of an odd situation, the way that's been done legally. So we will have an HOA that will incorporate the 40 new lots and the 6 vacant lots on Keswick. The 4 existing homeowners will not have to be a part of that HOA if they do not wish to be. So they'll get to use the roads, the improved roads, the street lights, the walkways for free.
And yet they'll have the benefit of the HOA maintaining the roads and so forth.
Correct.
I'm an HOA crazy. Bert and I have been HOAs for years and gone through the trials and tribulations of HOAs. I think that's my questions. That's my comments. Thank you.
I'm going to kind of piggyback on a question that Jack asked, and it comes out of my confusion in looking at the map with the historic properties, the current properties, and the new development, turning the attention to that open space. That dedicated open space calculation, I assume, does not take into account any of the current open space that exists under the existing development. Is that correct?
I don't know that there is any existing open space.
I think you're correct, because if I look back at the plat, for the original plat, I don't recall there being dedicated open space on the original plat in 1980.
Okay, so the area when I drive through there that looks like open space is actually the McAllister's property.
I'm not sure what space you're looking for.
The large area in the middle?
In the middle?
Their estate.
Yeah, so the large area in the middle is not part of this overall development. If I can direct your attention to the map,
Yep,
the heavy set line is actually the property lines that Ken will be developing, and included in there after deliberation with planning staff and engineering staff, the roadways, Keswick Lane and along Linden Road, are actually the private right-of-ways that will be transferred to Mr. Bass as part of this development. So that was one of the changes that we did make with planning and engineering.
Okay, so that 40-foot buffer area then will be under the ownership of the HOA?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you talk to me about the maintenance of that buffer?
Well, I hope that there won't be much maintenance because we're only going to clear enough to install the sewer line on part of that buffer. So the buffer up against Linden Road will never get touched. What looks to be the north part of the buffer will never be touched. As you come south, it won't be touched until it gets to the sewer line. And then we'll clear minimal space to install the sewer line, whatever Moore County requires us to clear for them to maintain that sewer line. And once we get past that sewer line, it won't be touched again. So as far as maintenance goes, it'll be in its natural vegetative state.
So there's, I heard you say earlier, but to reiterate, there is not a contemplation that this will become a gated community with a wall going through that buffer. Instead, it's going to, that buffer area, as far as your intentions are at this time, is to leave that relatively undisturbed except to put in that sewer line.
That's correct.
Okay. And so when I'm driving down the road and I'm seeing all these tagged trees, those trees are tagged for the purpose of your tree survey and not necessarily to indicate what is coming out.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you for that. I believe that is all I have for questions to the applicant. I would just say to the public who's with us today, again, thank you very much for being here. Sorry, Mr. McAllister. Thank you very much for being here because it's an important part of the process for you to be able to see us doing the work that we have to do. And since this is a ministerial, administrative kind of application, we have an ordinance that we follow. If they meet the requirements of the ordinance, it's our job to make a recommendation to move the project forward. However, there are some really valid concerns that we're hearing about traffic, about safety, about water runoff, and those kinds of things. As all of you know, I'm sure Linden Road is a state road and is under the purview of the State Department of Transportation. And it's really important to make sure that we have folks sitting on council who are able to liaise well with the State Department of Transportation. And that is where communication should go. Council, I live in the ETJ as well. I am not a resident of Pinehurst. I am the ETJ representative on this body. And it's important that we have a voice with the village and make sure that we have folks who are bringing our concerns to the state DOT. So, please think about that with your networking with our council. Think about that with our upcoming election. Because this is one place where we have the ability to connect with the folks up in Raleigh. Similarly, our council, as many of you know, have been working on a tree preservation ordinance because we are a tree city and we should be proud of our trees. And there are some folks in Raleigh who do not like municipalities being able to exert, a voice relative to what are considered cosmetics. And that's something, again, that raising your voice with our council and letting them know if those kinds of things are important to you, we need to be able to do that to be able to preserve the, the charm and the character of our neighborhood that we all care about. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Matt?
The only question I have in additional to what has been asked is following up on what Jules said. I guess a lot of questions about trees and buffers. What is the status of our tree ordinance, and is there any chance that this would have an impact on, that would have an impact on this development?
So keep an eye, if those of you who are signed up for the local sunshine list, so you'll get notifications of our public board meetings, such as this one, and those agendas that will be posted. Council has been, and staff has been updating councils. Council's been providing feedback on that proposed buffer ordinance. So it depends on if or when, whatever version or what simulation of the ordinance, if it's adopted, and at what point in time applications would come in for development after that. So if as is adopted, put in place, and after the infrastructure is put in place, final plat's approved and recorded, builder comes, submits for building permit, then it could certainly apply.
Let me add on. Let me just,
never works for me. We are looking at, we're hoping to get the proposed buffer development ordinance on the October 26th council agenda. I think we're on version 7 right now of the changes that we've made. We'll be talking to the village attorney with that either tomorrow or next week. So we think we are in the home stretch before we can get on the council agenda. And again, we think it's going to be on the 26th.
Great, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Matt. David?
Is this on? Okay, perfect. Again, thanks to all who did choose to speak tonight. As everyone has said before, you know, don't take, I guess, whatever decision is made tonight as, you know, not valuing any opinions or concerns or anything like that. But your concerns with some of the development are misplaced as far as what we're able to control. You know, as it's been mentioned before, it's an administrative hearing. So if the PDO is followed correctly, then we are to approve what's put in front of us. So if you have issues with the PDO or anything like that, that's where the concerns are. We can't fault someone who, you know, is exercising their right to use their land just as much as you're able to use your own property. So just something to consider there. As Jules mentioned, the traffic concerns are valid. You know, Pinehurst is a growing area. I've lived here pretty much my whole life, so I've seen all of the growth that's occurred. But again, those concerns are, you know, on the state-owned roads, they are with the state. That's where those concerns need to be addressed. I don't really have any questions other than, I guess, the proposed name of the subdivision.
Hollycrest.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Again, thank you all for being here. You know, I'll kind of jump on that comment as well. There is nothing more important to me than living in a community where citizens are involved. You were very much heard today. I personally share a lot of the same concerns. I live on Highway 5. I have a 4-year-old daughter. So it's very, very concerning to me. So as we relate what we're able to the administrative review that we have, which is, of course, you know, very kind of numerical, very factual in basis, as we relate that to what we have as far as the decision-making ability tonight. I just hope you all understand that you are heard. I'm very appreciative of that, and I hope you continue that voice. You are very much appreciated. Just a couple questions, really, to the applicants here today. Can you just answer the question from the public of where we developed the easement in the rear of the property for the sewer easement? Tell us a little bit about it and possibly if it can or cannot be moved elsewhere, why the decision was made there. And I think one of the points was asked, hey, can it move to the front of the property? Can you answer that for me?
Yes, I can. I was working with Moore County Utilities on the design of the utilities, and the sanitary sewer is the only one that's going along the east property line. That's going to affect some trees in that area. The elevation for getting that, you notice that sewer does service lots 1, 2, 3, 4 up in that cul-de-sac. Because of elevation, we cannot get the proper pitch in the sewer to get those lots serviced up there without going down the back, because that's the lowest end. So it's really an engineering issue on grade-wise. And secondly, it's also trying to preserve the existing pavement and existing improvements that are around the circle as well.
Can you answer, give us some thoughts, how we developed where our stormwater basins are currently. You know, we certainly can see the topography of the plat, but can you answer how those are developed and where do you see that going forward as you move into that stormwater calculation?
I can only give you what I have done so far, which is a preliminary analysis of the contributing acres being developed and that are undeveloped, and meeting the current guidelines set before me from engineering. With that said, preliminary numbers are showing the storm basin on the south to do an outstanding job of controlling excess than what Pinehurst requires. I won't go as far as to say that we can at this point till final design is, but preliminary indications are that not only will water be controlled in there, it will be controlled beyond what the Pinehurst requires. As far as the northeast pond, that one has been sized based on the drainage basins contributing there to try and protect the people in the back from any increased runoff. Otherwise, those lots developed on the north would have just water flowing to the back of those lots. So we're going to contain that water from that Rosedale Court. That's why that pond's there, to control the water, to prevent uncontrolled water going to the existing residents.
And so you are requesting a valley gutter versus standard curb and guttering. Some of the community already has some standard curbing throughout. Can you speak to that relatively to the water runoff and how some pros and cons to that?
It has no effect on water runoff. Concrete curb, whether it's vertical or roll face curb, it's concrete, it's an impervious surface. Water will flow to the existing catch basins and to the ponds.
Okay. Thank you.
Jeremy, I'm the one that requested that type of guttering for the simple fact of not having to cut the curb when we install driveways.
Yeah, I'm aware of that reasoning. It's pretty popular, of course. But I wanted to make sure that we started that conversation at this point, you know, even though it's not a decision we make. Do you mind answering the different colors of banding on the trees for the public?
I actually don't know. That was a surveyor's decision, what colors he tagged. We were asked to tag any trees 12 inches and larger, I believe. So they tagged lots and lots of trees, and they were only tagged for survey purposes. They have no relevance as to what's coming out or what's staying. So obviously, when we do the new cul-de-sacs and the new roads, we will clear whatever trees are in the way of those and that new storm basin, and that's all that will get cleared initially. Nothing else will be touched. As the homes are being built, they will clear minimal trees to build the houses. Again, the builder has expressed sincere interest in bringing Pinehurst architecture, so they're not going to go in and just whack all the trees. And I do expect by the time this ever reaches fulfillment that there will be a tree ordinance in place, so they'll be required to keep certain number of trees, and if not, replant new trees along with those.
By the time the permit is asked to be built for the building.
Correct.
Yeah. Jeremy, and I know it was, you know, a comment made, and you know, the trees were a flagged major topic that was brought up. Absent the surveyor being here who prepared the tree survey, and you know, Jeff and myself were back and forth a lot with giving the surveyor the information he needed to complete that. What I believe the different bandings are for is that the requirement is that specimen trees as defined in the PDO be identified. And they're identified one of two ways. One, that they be a diameter breast height of 8 inches or greater, and one of the following type species like pine, holly, magnolia, or any tree that has a DBH of 24 inches or greater. So these may be a different species than those others just by definition, but because of their size, they're classified as a specimen tree. So I with absence of surveyor being here, I think that addresses the question.
Gotcha. Thank you. And of course, like you said, the surveyor's not here with us tonight. To kind of go back to the sewer easement as well, are there any old sewer lines running through the property that may be disturbed or left?
Yes, and they are shown on there.
And so they're shown
Yes,
on the property.
they are shown on the property, and we're trying to utilize those as well.
Okay, so you plan on utilizing them?
Yes.
No problem.
So there are 2 that are being abandoned, I believe.
Am I
And the
pointing
rest
them
is
out?
abandoned. Sometimes they fill them with sand, and there's specific abandonment procedures, engineering-wise, that Moore County will hold us to.
So Moore County will direct those, but do you mind pointing them out on the plat for us?
Yes, you have to move up. It's on the south side. A little bit more. There you go. So if you see the dark line at the very southeast corner of Lot 20, there's an existing sanitary sewer running up the common lot line between lots 19 and 20. We are building a sewer, tapping it correct right there, and then we're utilizing the sewer going to the left to the pond between lots 21 and 20. And that's where there's an existing sewer that goes between, in lot 21. Yeah, right there, where I think you got your palm. Goes a little north of that. Yep. We're relaying that sewer to go to the proper common property lines between 24 and 25. So that's the sewer that's being abandoned.
For clarity, that's not part of our decision-making ability tonight, but that's part of Moore County's.
That is correct.
Okay. So I want to talk about lighting requirements for the development for a second. Can you speak to what lighting you are planning for the community at this point in time? And then I want to get a kind of a standard, I want to get an acknowledgement from staff on where that kind of relates to, Pinehurst requirements there in the PDO.
So I don't think we're required to put streetlights in, but we're planning on doing streetlights with Duke Energy, and I sent Duke Energy the Pinehurst guidelines as far as the look, the placement, and that's how it was designed.
Have they come back at any point in time yet and pinpointed any placement?
I don't know that it's on this plat, but I may have a design from them, yes.
And it's very possible that it'll be included as we get to the council stage.
Correct.
I would guess. Okay. All right. Thank you. Is there any other input that you two may have or any other questions from the board as we went around the horn?
I had one last question. The storm basins, there was a question raised from the community with a concern about mosquitoes during summer. Can you talk to us about the storm basins? Is it simply a catchment of stagnant water, or how does that work?
Okay, so I'm not a mosquito expert, so I apologize to anybody who's out there that is. But the South Basin has existing water in it at all times. So I imagine there would be some mosquitoes there now. We're not planning on changing any of that characteristics. The North Pond will be designed to standards set forth by the community. So I'm not sure if that's going to be a wet pond or a dry pond. If it's a dry pond, it would only be wet during rainstorms where it would flow in and flow out at a controlled rate. So the water would be controlled within there over a 24-hour period and then be empty. The only thing I can maybe add, and this is something I will work out between Mike Engineering and Planning, is whether that North Pond needs to be a wet pond, which means it would have water in it at all time. And then, yes, mosquitoes would obviously stagnant water. But as of right now, I'm proposing that to be a dry pond.
Thank you.
The pond on the south is, I wouldn't really call it a storm basin, I would call it a pond. And that's what we're going to use for controlling the water on the south side. The smaller one on the north, if we do end up, if that does end up having water in it on a continual basis, I would imagine that the HOA would engage a mosquito company to spray it on a regular basis, at least during the summertime.
Okay, thank you for entertaining the question.
Anyone else on the board? Questions, comments?
Yeah, I've been sitting here pondering this since I heard the statement from Mr. Bass. I know you don't have to give the name of the builder, but I don't quite understand why it has to be a secret. And maybe the homeowners would feel better knowing who the builder is.
I understand. What if I eliminate some builders? Maybe that would make them feel better.
Okay.
It will not be H&H. It will not be Cavendish and Cates. It will not be on-site homes. It will not be, anybody want to throw any other names out there that they don't want to see? It won't be them. No, that I actually own GWB Construction, and I will not be building the homes.
So I'm sorry, but just for the sake of quorum tonight, I just want to keep, outburst. I really apologize for that. But anything you want to answer that you've heard so far or include?
Yeah, I understand. The reason I would rather not say is because the builder may get hassled. I expect it, doing what I'm doing, but I would rather them not get hassled for no particular reason. They've done nothing at this point.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right.
I got one quick question, sorry, Jimmy.
Please.
To clarify, the open space that is between on the south side, between kind of the Braintree neighborhood area and the development, other than the sewer easement, which is shown as 20-foot in the 40-foot open space, the open space will not be cleared, correct?
That is absolutely correct. It will be untouched, left in its natural state.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentation today.
Thanks.
Thank you for your interaction. What I would like to do at this point in time is I think what we should do is go ahead and accept a motion to exit.
I'll move to adjourn the public hearing, number one, and re-enter the regular meeting first.
That was where I was going. Thank you. Thank you, Jack, for
Second.
that. And it's motion by Jack, second by Sonia. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, hearing none, we have exited the public hearing, and we are now back into our regular session meeting. So at this stage, let's go ahead and deliberate, try to form a motion if we feel like that we can make a decision tonight. Thank you. Thank you to all who are leaving.
Thank you.
So if you guys feel compelled, let's just go ahead and kind of jump in and have the conversation. If we need to go around the horn, we'll do so, but where are we?
Well, I for one, I see no inconsistency with the PDO standards that are required. I think there's some very, very legitimate concerns, traffic being one, stormwater management being another, and the preservation of the natural estate condition of the perimeter being, seem to be serious items. And I would urge the developer to consider those.
Jack, we may.
Let's just wait a second until they clear out.
Those having conversations, if you wouldn't mind stepping outside, please.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you, David. Okay, Jack, thank you.
No, I don't need to repeat it. I just don't see the inconsistencies with the PDO that we're evaluating this against. It all seems to be consistent with the PDO, but I'll reiterate it again. I think the public has expressed some very legitimate concerns relative to traffic. There's very little to do with traffic, quite honestly. But I think they do have legitimate concerns that the developer could consider as they go forward, and that is the preservation of the perimeter in its natural state, and also making sure that stormwater management is a high priority both for them and for the homeowners association when it's informed. And just a word of caution on homeowners association, having been down this road many, many times. is that a homeowners association being responsible for the infrastructure tends to be a little bit penny wise and pound foolish in the beginning, wanting to keep the costs low, but not recognizing that the capital expenses to rejuvenate the infrastructure when in fact during the 10, 20-year period later on when they have to, they can quickly run out of money. And that's really outside the scope of this hearing, but I just wanted to make sure that the HOA is in fact going to do its job responsibly right from the beginning. That's very important.
I have a side question for you, Jack. Were you aware of any sort of historic nature on the property?
No, I'm not. In fact, I was surprised to hear, I assumed that they were talking about that the manor house, which was originally apparently appeared to be some kind of a location for a clubhouse, but never really happened. That apparently has been registered with the historic places.
I don't believe, it may have been it may have been a location for a clubhouse, but the manor house predated any kind of subdivision in that area. So they may have been thinking about doing something with an existing structure or in addition to the existing structure, but the McAllister's home is historic.
Okay, so it's registered in the National Register of
I
Historic
don't know
Places?
if it's, I don't know, it's too bad they left, because they could certainly tell us.
That would be of some interest.
I don't know if it's registered nationally, but it is registered.
Well, so I checked with on the state's website, and it's surveyed only, so it doesn't have, that's its status. So which normally means there's some documentation, but it doesn't have a national status.
Thank you.
Okay. Interesting.
Who else? Who else would like to kind of chime into our decision?
Make sure I step away from this. Somebody had seemed to think in the crowd there may have been a previous HOA at any time. I mean, just second pass on that, nothing was ever established there. I mean, I'm asking for you as well because I guess you don't want to run into that later if somebody does find it. Can anybody confirm that on the staff?
I've had conversations with the current owners and what I imagine or what I understood to kind of be a somewhat maybe informal representation of the HOA. But as Jack mentioned, there's some sort of CNRs there with that property. Because the question that was posed to myself was based on a permitted structure that may or may not have met those restrictions. So
Correct.
I think there is some sort of an HOA. I just don't know how well organized or how formally or informally it really is structured.
There are declarations filed at Moore County that apply to all the current lots, the 9 current lots. But in those declarations, it specifies that an HOA may be formed, which is rather interesting. So it doesn't indicate that there is currently an HOA. It just says with these declarations, they apply to the property, prohibiting certain types of things, but also say an HOA will be formed or may be formed. So it's really unclear if there is one currently.
I have one other thing to address is the traffic on Linden Road. I live right off of Linden Road and take my life in my hands when I cross Linden Road if I want to walk way down to Elliott's that way. And have talked to the police department here about putting up a sidewalk, or I don't know, sidewalk, but across that people will notice, was there's just a couple of lines in some of them, and fought for the crosswalk on 5 there from Shaw. Let me tell you, those cars do not stop. It is flashing. The trucks with their trailers go right through the flashing lights. And the same thing is going to happen down on Linden. So if you're going to put in anything, I think we need to have more input with the DOT and not just listen to what their statistics are. I mean, it just doesn't work for Pinehurst.
I have a question for Alex. Does the trail, the Pinehurst Trail, is that on Linden Road right away, or is it on this property?
A little bit of both. There's an easement that is has been granted to the Village of Pinehurst for that.
Okay,
green
I
retail.
assume that that easement will be honored in the future?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Let me ask this question before I ask for a motion. Are there any concerns relative to the nature of the compliance or consistency with the design standards that are identified in our PDO from anybody here, that we shouldn't move forward? Okay, so just hearing no from everybody, I would like to request a motion that we can vote on from somebody. And staff has prepared some wording as well.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Board recommend approval to the Pinehurst Village Council of the proposed major subdivision Hollycrest.
Second.
So a motion has been made by Matt Jones and seconded by Philip Schumacher. What I would like to do is take a voice vote from left to right, starting with David.
I agree with the motion.
Yes.
Recommend approval.
Agree with the motion?
Agree, because it can't be disagreed with.
I agree with the motion.
With the hopes of, with the applicant comments on the type, style, quality of construction as it goes from one developer to the builder, that those standards exist throughout the duration of the effort, I would agree with the motion as well.
So with 7 agrees and 0 disagrees, the ayes have it. We are approved. Is there anything else administratively we need to do with that? No? Okay. All right. So we have concluded that portion of the meeting, and let's go ahead and move forward with general business. Is there any general business with the board anybody would like to discuss? None?
Well, just a quick update. Then next week's council meeting, for the appointments. In the next upcoming council meeting, the appointments of Jeremy and Paul will be placed on the council meeting agenda.
What did you say?
Appointments.
Jeremy and Paul's reappointments will be on the next council meeting agenda, and as well as formally placing Jeremy as in the chair role as well to replace Cindy. So we obviously we're going to be starting to recruit as well, and look for the board maybe at the next meeting to consider election of a first vice chair. So be thinking if you're interested, or if anyone you would like to maybe consider nominating for that position if they are interested.
So thank you. I guess because technically this is, could be my last meeting with you all. So
I don't think so.
technically speaking, it very well could be.
Nice try.
Hey, good try.
Yeah. Looking for a card? Yes. Any other general business that we have from the board or staff?
Just one, I guess, comment question. With the moratorium, is there anything that we need to be looking at before this expires and we start getting dealt a bunch of, Darren, please go ahead.
Actually, with the moratorium didn't impact anything over here, of course. It was in the 2 small area plan areas. We'll be going to probably, again, on 26, same as the buffer development ordinance, we'll be, we're looking at extending the moratorium for at least another 60 days to allow us time to complete the small area plans. Right now, we're trying to pinpoint a meeting in mid-November for that 3rd and final workshop. So right now, that's where we are right now with the small area plans.
Thank you.
And we'll be publicizing that once we get to that point. So you'll all be invited, and we're hoping that one will be in person.
The form-based zoning, is that going to be in there at all, the discussions we had last month?
It should be.
Okay.
It's either going to fall at part of that final report, or it will follow shortly after when we move towards adoption of that final report, because we don't want to put all the effort into doing the form-based code and making a lot of adjustments based on that final plan.
Thanks.
Darren and Alex, have you heard of any updates on the tree legislation up at Raleigh, whether through traditional or non-traditional channels?
I haven't had an update in the past couple of weeks or so. I do participate in a legislative update committee call. It happens bi-monthly, but no updates that I have at this point.
But kind of on that topic, I would like to make sure that us as a board really appreciate Darren and Alex for the tireless effort and hours that you have placed with that in years, because when I first came to the board, that was a discussion. I know as of, maybe you can answer, but possibly a year before that. So I think an appreciation is in order for that, so thank you.
Most updated version is right here. So-
Right there. You're working on it as we speak. Okay, any other general business? None? So those of us left in the audience, do we have any general comments that anybody would like to make at this point in time? None? Thank you, thank you. So just next, our next meeting is November 4th, 2021. Just as we move forward throughout the month in the communication, just please communicate if you are not able to make it. Otherwise, thank you, and can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn the meeting.
Motion made by Matt,
Second.
seconded by Jack. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we are complete. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.